Always appreciate getting to talk to Steve Whyno, lead hockey writer for the Associated Press. Whyno, I know you were at the Four Nations in Boston, Montreal, going with all those games. Some of the guys that weren't there, not a single Washington Capital player was represented in the Four Nations. They come back off that break and look absolutely red hot. They're scoring touchdowns in a field goal league. How good is this Caps team considering what we saw over the weekend?
Yeah, JP, this is back to the early start Capitals where they were beating up on teams and you're scoring 15 goals in under 24 hours. Alex Ovechkin must have been jealous of everybody scoring the 8 in Pittsburgh. He has a hat trick and is now 13 away from breaking Wayne Gretzky's record. All of a sudden, like we're talking about the potential of him doing it this season now. And the Capitals have shown that they can win in so many different ways. Last year, they had to win so many times, 2-1, 3-2. They scraped into the playoffs in the last game of the season. And this is just a dominant team. And they don't really like to talk about being dominant, but this is a team that can blow opponents away. They can win close games. They can fall behind and early in games and come back. This is a really confident group that the sky's the limit on the potential.
Now, they're in a bit of a dogfight with Winnipeg to see who will be the top points getter across the league. But in the Eastern Conference, I mean, the Caps are clearly out in front, going for, first place of the regular season. What has been kind of the biggest surprise of the success for you this season?
I think the surprise for me has been just how good Pierre-Luc Dubois has been fitting in. This was a guy who had a terrible contract or a terrible year with the Los Angeles Kings last season, has bounced around from Columbus to Winnipeg to LA, and for the first time was traded sort of without his consent because he had a terrible year and didn't fit in LA. And so Brian McClellan goes and trades Darcy Kemper for Pierre-Luc Dubois, and he's fit in perfectly. Spencer Carberry has sort of empowered Pierre-Luc Dubois to believe in himself and just be himself. And he doesn't have to be a point of game player, but when the Capitals lose Nicholas Backstrom to that hip injury that has sidelined him and likely ended his career, they needed someone to step up. And with Dylan Strome already there, Evgeny Kuznetsov gone to home to Russia to play in the KHL, and that trade to Carolina last year, Pierre-Luc Dubois has fit in so swimmingly perfectly for this team and given them the sort of center depth that you need to win in the regular season and then obviously win in the playoffs and try to go on a long run this spring.
Yeah, I mean, he's been a huge piece. You mentioned that Ovi had the hat trick in Sunday's game and how close he's really now getting to Gretzky. To me, it seemed like the Caps plan was kind of, let's just build enough around Ovi so we can get the record and then we'll kind of figure it out. But this thing just hit the gas. I mean, they're a real cup contender and Ovi's playing fantastic.
Yeah, JP, and it's really hard because you look at the Pittsburgh Penguins and they're failing at that. It's really hard to win and stay on top for long. We always see this in every sport. There's cycles where you got to go into a rebuild or whatever. And the Penguins with Sidney Crosby and Evgeny Malkin have tried to hold on to this and failed. The St. Louis Blues, winning championship in 2019, have failed. Brian McClellan deserves all the kudos in the world for building a team that, you're right, can help Alex Ovechkin get the record. But the whole point of that is to help him get the record, they need to be a contending team. And I really thought going into the season that maybe they would be a bubble playoff team. That this is somebody they can sneak in. They're probably a little bit better than last year. They're a wild card team, and just everything has gone right. Going out and trading for Logan Thompson from Vegas, the Pierre-Luc Dubois trade, signing Jacob Chikrin, just everything has gone right. It's like you roll the dice or you're playing craps and you're hitting every time and everybody's making a ton of money. That's sort of like fun in a casino is what the Capitals feel like this year. Like every button that Brian McClellan has pushed, every button that Coach Spencer Carberry, who should be Coach of the Year in the NHL this year unless Columbus makes it, every button has worked out perfectly. They've gotten great goaltending. They've gotten depth on defense and depth scoring. And then Alex Ovechkin also is one goal away from his 18th different 30-goal season.
It's crazy. It's funny because, you also do some Commanders coverage. We're out there at games and everything went right for the Commanders. All their free agent moves. Obviously, you get Jaden Daniels and the Caps are having that same season. You were in the building for Obi's hat trick the other day. How electric was Capital One? And I go to as many games as I can. You can feel the buzz starting to mount, both for Obi's chase of Gretzky and just for how good this team is and maybe a long playoff run coming.
You could feel the buzz before the game. Even like I was visited a friend at the Irish Channel to say hello before the game, and that place was packed. Of course, and that place was packed, and like an hour wait for food just because it was jammed of the excitement of it hasn't been a Capitals game at home for so long. I think people got juiced up by that Four Nations tournament and seeing best on best hockey, even though there weren't any Capitals players involved. But just to have the Capitals back atop the Eastern Conference, now atop the NHL, Connor McDavid in the building, greatest player, hockey player on earth, and had a spectacular period and a half, I guess. But also the Ovechkin chase, and you could sense it every time the puck is on Ovechkin's stick. It's almost like the crowd leans forward a little bit and is just waiting for the next goal. And he delivered on the first goal, on the power play goal, and the empty netter. There's just this sense of anticipation. You couldn't get into the building yesterday for under $100, and I'm sure that's going to continue. That this there's something special about this time in Capitals history, celebrating the 50th anniversary, Ovechkin on this chase, and a real fun team to watch.
A really fun team to watch because it's not just Ovi scoring. Like you said, they dropped 8 in Pittsburgh. Ovi doesn't even sniff one. Everybody's trying to figure this out. When will Ovi catch and then pass Gretzky? What's your prediction? Give me a date. Give me a game.
I got two games for you, and it's April 12th and 13th. They're at the Columbus Blue Jackets, and then they're home against the Columbus Blue Jackets on a back-to-back on the weekend. Alex Ovechkin scored his first goal, number one, against the Columbus Blue Jackets in his NHL debut. It would be really fitting if he scores 895 against them as well.
That'd be a crazy serendipitous coincidence, whatever that would be, just to bookend that. Dude, you've dedicated most of your life to hockey, at least in your career, right? Is this Gretzky record? This was never going to be broken, correct?
Never. Never. No, this is Cal Ripken consecutive games level insane. And the record that we're never going to see, and then maybe the coolest stat in sports is that if Wayne Gretzky never scored a goal, he would still be the all-time leading scorer in the NHL. He has more assists than anyone else has points, and that is absurd, and we will never see that. But no one ever thought this was possible. And I think there was maybe 2 or 3 years ago, a little maybe after the pandemic, coming out of the pandemic, where you started to wonder, like, is this really possible? Because players don't score this level of goals into their mid 30s, late 30s. Alex Ovechkin's 39 years old. I just turned 39 and I'm exhausted watching him. And just to see what he does at this age is just it's we've never seen it before. And I really hope people who are sort of watching these games, whether it's win or lose or whatever, that you can sort of appreciate we're watching a greatness that has never been seen in this sport before because guys just don't score like this. The scoring peak in for hockey players is somewhere between 23 and 29. Alex Ovechkin is a decade past that and still scoring. And it's remarkable that he's even approaching this. And now it feels like a matter of when, not if he's going to do it this season.
For you, with Ovi, a guy you've covered a long time. I mean, I kind of know Ovi. I imagine you know him well. Do you get the sense that he's taking the moment in? I couldn't help but notice during the hat trick against the Oilers how he had his son there and was able to go fist bump the glass. And I mean, young Ovi to the father he is now after losing his dad. Do you think he's allowing himself to enjoy the moments?
I actually do, and I got a chance to sit down with Alex Ovechkin last week a little bit about sort of this and being a father and all these sort of things, and he kind of took it from how his parents sort of didn't want to push them into sports, but wants to sort of give his kids a chance to sort of be around hockey, and says they love playing hockey at home and being at these games, and John Carlson said this a few weeks ago that as you start getting toward the end of a career, that you maybe look to your left or to your right when you're driving down Constitution and see the Washington Monument, or you start sort of getting a little more reflective about that. And I do get the sense that maybe for the better part of the last 5 or 6 years since that championship, that Alex Ovechkin was sort of like going about his career and not really thinking about this. And that lately, with those more gray hairs, with more experience, with his kids growing up, I do think he's become very reflective and sort of thinking about his place in history, what all this means, because he may not be. I mean, he's got 1 year left on his contract, but the end is coming near for Alex Ovechkin's career, and certainly going in the Hall of Fame as soon as he is eligible to be there. That I think he's starting to sort of feel the monumental impact of all of this and really soak it in with his kids being in the locker room and at the games and just sort of trying to make this a family affair as much as it is about him and trying to include sort of his family in this accomplishment.
It's great. I mean, even on a personal level, like I'm trying to take my daughters as I have gray hairs emerging and watching my kids grow up. Like I want to get them to a game to watch Ovi in this quest. One more non-Ovi division, because we've talked about the offense, how good they've been. The goaltending's been really good too. As we get to kind of the real playoff guts of this thing coming up, how important is it to have two goalies that can really help you?
It's spectacular. And Charlie Lindgren really did carry the Capitals to the playoffs last year. His play down the stretch in any other year might have gotten him some MVP consideration, just given how good he was. But Logan Thompson has been the guy who's going to probably shoulder the load. And the Capitals, with goaltending coach Scott Murray and Spencer Carberry, have done a really good job this year of rotating them almost every other game most of the time to sort of not burn out either Logan Thompson or Charlie Lindgren. And they've gotten solid goaltending almost all the time and spectacular goaltending at times when they needed it. Logan Thompson signs the 6-year extension, the long-term contract extension now, where he's going to be around for a long time. I believe the Capitals would love to do the same thing with Charlie Lindgren and sort of keep this tandem going for the foreseeable future. When it comes to this spring, I would expect pretty close to a 50-50 split between Logan Thompson and Charlie Lindgren as they sort of gear up for the playoffs. And then maybe one of these guys emerges as the clear number one, because we've seen in other teams in the past, it's hard to sort of split the goaltending duties in the playoffs and have any measure of success. You kind of need one guy to take it. But for these last 25 games of the season, the Capitals are in an enviable spot of having two guys who can play any night. And when you have back-to-backs like they did this past weekend, you don't have any fear of a drop-off from one guy to the other.
Whyno, you're the best. Thank you for the time. Caps next game Tuesday night, Calgary coming to town.